The day my mother-in-law's restaurant closed forever, I stood in my own kitchen, watching through the window as she loaded the last of her equipment into a moving truck. 23 years of her legacy, reduced to cardboard boxes and bitter tears. She never knew that the woman who destroyed everything she'd built had been sitting at her dinner table for the past 5 years, enduring every cutting remark, every dismissive glance, every cruel comparison to her precious departed first daughter-in-law. Hit like and subscribe if you've ever been underestimated by your own family, because this story is about turning that underestimation into the most satisfying victory of my life. My name is Marissa Blake. I am 32 years old, and I live in Millbrook, a small town in upstate New York where everyone knows everyone else's business, and family secrets have a way of simmering just beneath the surface until they finally boil over. When I moved here 5 years ago after marrying my husband David, I thought I was gaining a family. Instead, I walked into a war zone where I was outnumbered, outgunned, and completely unprepared for the battlefield that would become my daily life. David's mother, Patricia Holloway, owned the most successful restaurant in town. Holloway's heritage had been serving authentic American comfort food for over 2 decades, and Patricia wore her reputation like a crown. She was the queen of Millbrook's dining scene, and she made sure everyone knew it. The restaurant wasn't just her business, it was her identity, her pride, and her weapon of choice when it came to establishing dominance in every relationship she entered. From the moment I walked through the doors of that restaurant as David's new girlfriend, Patricia made it clear that I would never measure up to her standards. But it wasn't until I became her daughter-in-law that I truly understood the depth of her cruelty and the systematic way she planned to break me down. The first dinner I cooked for David's family was supposed to be a peace offering. I had spent 3 days planning the menu, shopping for the finest ingredients I could afford, and preparing what I thought was a beautiful meal. I made herb-crusted salmon with roasted vegetables, garlic mashed potatoes, and a chocolate tart for dessert. I had learned to cook from my grandmother, who had taught me that food was love made visible. And I poured every ounce of affection I felt for my new family into that meal. Patricia took one bite of the salmon and set down her fork with theatrical precision. "It's dry," she announced to the table. "And the seasoning is all wrong, David. Honey, you remember how perfectly Rebecca used to prepare fish, don't you? She had such a delicate touch with seafood. Rebecca, the ghost who would haunt every meal, every conversation, every moment of my marriage. David's first wife had died in a car accident 3 years before I met him, and Patricia had turned her memory into a weapon designed to cut me down at every opportunity. The potatoes are lumpy," Patricia continued, her voice carrying that particular tone of disappointed authority that made everyone at the table shift uncomfortably. "And this chocolate tart, well, it's store-bought, isn't it? I can always tell Rebecca made everything from scratch." She understood that cooking is about more than just following recipes. It's about having an instinct, a natural gift. Some people have it, and some people don't. I felt the heat rise in my cheeks as David reached over and squeezed my hand under the table. "Mom, the meal is delicious," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. Even he could feel the tension crackling in the air. "I'm not trying to be mean, dear," Patricia said, turning to me with a smile that never reached her eyes. "I'm just trying to help. If you're going to be part of this family, you need to understand our standards. The Holloway name means something in this town, and that includes everything we serve at our table." That night, as I lay in bed listening to David's steady breathing, I made a decision that would change everything. I wasn't going to let Patricia destroy my confidence or my love for cooking. Instead, I was going to prove her wrong. I had no idea that this decision would eventually lead to the complete destruction of everything she held dear. The criticism didn't stop with that first dinner. It became a weekly ritual of humiliation. Every Sunday, David and I would go to Patricia's house for family dinner, and every Sunday, she would find new ways to tear down everything I brought to the table. My homemade bread was too dense compared to Rebecca's airy loaves. My roast chicken was overcooked and underseasoned. My apple pie was acceptable but lacking the perfect crust that Rebecca always achieved. The comparisons to Rebecca weren't limited to cooking. Patricia would reminisce about Rebecca's gardening skills while pointing out the brown spots on my houseplants. She would mention Rebecca's impeccable taste in home decor while commenting on the interesting choices I had made in our living room. She would even compare our appearances, noting how Rebecca had possessed such natural elegance while I was trying so hard to fit in. But it was the cooking criticism that hurt the most, because cooking had always been my sanctuary. In the kitchen, I felt connected to my grandmother's memory, to generations of women who had nourished their families with love and skill. Patricia's constant attacks on my culinary abilities felt like an assault on my very identity. David tried to defend me, but his efforts were half-hearted and ineffective. He would make weak protests about his mother's behavior, but he would never directly confront her. I began to realize that Patricia's control over her family went deeper than I had initially understood. She had perfected the art of psychological manipulation, using guilt, emotional blackmail, and financial dependence to keep everyone in line. The restaurant gave Patricia even more ammunition for her attacks. She would regale us with stories about customers who raved about her cooking, about food critics who had praised her innovative takes on classic dishes, about the waiting list for weekend reservations. Then she would turn to me and say something like, "You should come work in the kitchen sometime, dear. You might learn something about proper technique." I started avoiding family dinners, claiming work obligations or mysterious illnesses. But Patricia was relentless. She would show up at our house uninvited, always with some excuse about needing to borrow something or check on David. She would walk through our kitchen like a health inspector, noting expired items in our refrigerator, questioning my food storage methods and making suggestions about more efficient ways to organize my spices. The breaking point came during Thanksgiving of my second year in the family. Patricia had insisted on hosting the dinner at her house, and she had assigned me the task of bringing the stuffing. I had worked for hours perfecting my grandmother's recipe, adjusting the seasonings, testing different bread combinations, and creating what I knew was an exceptional dish. When I arrived at Patricia's house, she was already surrounded by her adoring court of friends and extended family members. She greeted me with air kisses and immediately began praising the other dishes that had been contributed by various guests. "Margaret's green bean casserole is absolutely divine," she announced loudly. "And Sarah's cranberry sauce is perfection. She used Rebecca's recipe, you know. Rebecca always made the most beautiful cranberry sauce." When it came time to serve the stuffing, Patricia made a great show of tasting it in front of everyone. She took a small spoonful, chewed thoughtfully, and then shook her head with what appeared to be genuine sadness. "Oh, sweetheart," she said, her voice carrying to every corner of the room. "I'm afraid this is just too salty, and the texture is all wrong. It's more like wet bread than proper stuffing. I'm so sorry, but I don't think we can serve this to our guests. It would reflect poorly on the family." The room fell silent. Every person at that table knew what was happening, and every person chose to look away rather than defend me. Patricia had successfully orchestrated my public humiliation, and no one was willing to challenge her authority. I felt something break inside me that day. Not just my heart, but my spirit. I had tried so hard to be accepted, to prove myself worthy of this family's love and respect. Instead, I had been systematically degraded and dismissed. But as I sat there in that suffocating silence, feeling the weight of 20 pairs of eyes avoiding my gaze, I realized something important. I was done trying to earn Patricia's approval. From now on, I was going to focus on earning her respect, whether she wanted to give it or not. That night, I made a decision that would change the trajectory of my life. I was going to learn everything I could about cooking, about running a restaurant, about the food industry. I was going to become so skilled, so knowledgeable, so successful that Patricia would never again be able to dismiss me or my abilities. I enrolled in culinary school, taking evening classes. While working my day job at the local bank, I studied food chemistry, knife skills, menu planning, and restaurant management. I learned about different cuisines, cooking techniques, and flavor profiles. I read cookbooks like novels, absorbing every detail about ingredients, preparation methods, and presentation. Most importantly, I learned about the business side of the restaurant industry. I studied profit margins, inventory management, customer service, and marketing strategies. I researched successful restaurants, analyzing what made them profitable and sustainable. I learned about food costs, labor expenses, and the dozens of factors that could make or break a restaurant. Patricia noticed my absence from family dinners but attributed it to my inability to handle constructive criticism. She had no idea that I was systematically acquiring the skills and knowledge that would eventually destroy everything she had built. During this time, I also began to understand the true nature of Patricia's restaurant. Holloway's heritage was successful primarily because it had no real competition in Millbrook. The food was mediocre at best, but it was the only upscale dining option in town. Patricia's reputation was built more on her aggressive marketing and social connections than on actual culinary excellence. I started eating at the restaurant regularly, not with David and his family, but alone or with friends from work. I studied every dish, every flavor combination, every aspect of the dining experience. I took notes on the service, the ambience, the pricing, and the customer reactions. I was conducting reconnaissance, gathering intelligence that would prove invaluable in the war one was planning to wage. What I discovered was that Patricia's cooking was stuck in the past. She served the same tired menu she had been serving for 20 years, with minor seasonal variations. The dishes were heavy, oversalted, and lacking in creativity. The restaurant's success depended entirely on its monopoly on fine dining in Millbrook, not on the quality of the food or the dining experience. I also learned about the restaurant's financial situation by carefully listening to Patricia's complaints. During family gatherings, she was constantly worried about rising food costs, difficulty finding reliable staff, and the challenges of maintaining her aging equipment. The restaurant was profitable, but not by much, and it was vulnerable to competition in ways that Patricia didn't seem to understand. After 2 years of intensive study and preparation, I was ready to make my move. I had saved enough money to secure a lease on the perfect location. A beautiful, historic building directly across the street from Holloway's heritage. The timing was perfect because the previous tenant, a struggling antique shop, had just closed, and the landlord was eager to find a new tenant. I kept my plans secret from David and his family, claiming that I was using the space as an art studio. I told them that I had decided to pursue my hobby of painting as a way to relax and express my creativity. This explanation satisfied everyone, including David, who was relieved that I had found a constructive outlet for what he perceived as my artistic temperament. The transformation of the space took 6 months. I worked with contractors to create an open kitchen concept that would allow diners to watch the cooking process. I installed state-of-the-art equipment, designed a sophisticated lighting system, and created an atmosphere that was both elegant and welcoming. I chose colors and textures that complemented the historic architecture while feeling thoroughly modern and fresh. The menu I developed was everything that Patricia's was not. Instead of heavy, traditional dishes, I created lighter, more innovative options that showcased fresh, local ingredients. I established relationships with local farmers and suppliers, ensuring that my ingredients were always seasonal and of the highest quality. I developed signature dishes that combined familiar flavors with unexpected techniques and presentations. Most importantly, I priced my menu strategically. My dishes were comparable in price to Patricia's, but they offered significantly more value in terms of quality, presentation, and innovation. I knew that once people tasted my food, they would never want to go back to the mediocre offerings at Holloway's Heritage. I hired a small but skilled staff, including a talented sous chef who had trained at some of the finest restaurants in New York City. I trained my servers extensively, ensuring that they could speak knowledgeably about every dish, every ingredient, and every cooking technique. I wanted every aspect of the dining experience to be superior to what Patricia offered. The name I chose for my restaurant was crucial to my strategy. I called it Revenge Treats, a playful reference to the concept of comfort food elevated to an art form. The name was memorable, intriguing, and perfectly captured the spirit of what I was trying to achieve. People would remember eating at Revenge Treats, and they would want to come back for more. The marketing campaign I developed was subtle but effective. I focused on social media, creating beautiful photographs of my dishes and sharing stories about the local suppliers and ingredients I was using. I partnered with food bloggers and local influencers, inviting them to preview tastings and behind-the-scenes looks at my kitchen. I also developed a loyalty program that rewarded frequent diners with exclusive access to new dishes, special events, and seasonal menus. I wanted to create a sense of community around my restaurant, a feeling that dining at Revenge Treats was more than just a meal. It was an experience that connected people to their food, their community, and each other. The soft opening was scheduled for a Thursday evening in late September. I invited a carefully selected group of food enthusiasts, local business owners, and influential community members. I wanted to create buzz and anticipation before the official grand opening the following week. The evening was a complete success. Every dish was executed perfectly. The service was flawless, and the response from the guests was overwhelmingly positive. People were taking photographs of their food, sharing their experience on social media, and making reservations for future visits before they had even finished their meals. But the real test would come when Patricia discovered what I had been doing. I knew that she would eventually notice the construction across the street, the new signage, and the activity in what she assumed was my art studio. I was prepared for her reaction, but I wasn't prepared for how quickly and decisively it would come. The morning after my soft opening, Patricia called David in a fury. She had seen the photographs on social media, recognized the interior of the space, and put together the pieces of what I had been planning. She demanded that David and I come to her house immediately for an emergency family meeting. When we arrived, Patricia was waiting in her formal living room, surrounded by photo printouts from my restaurant's social media accounts. She had clearly been awake all night, researching my restaurant, analyzing my menu, and planning her counterattack. "How dare you?" she said, her voice trembling with rage. "How dare you open a restaurant across the street from mine, without even having the courtesy to tell me what you were planning? This is a betrayal of the worst kind, and I will not tolerate it." David looked confused and hurt. "Marissa, why didn't you tell me you were opening a restaurant? I thought you were pursuing art. I don't understand why you would keep something like this secret. I had prepared for this moment for months, and I knew exactly what I needed to say. I didn't tell you because I knew you would try to talk me out of it. I knew that Patricia would find some way to sabotage my plans, or convince you that I was being disloyal to the family. I needed to prove to myself that I could succeed on my own merits, without interference or manipulation." Patricia's face turned red with fury. "You think you can waltz into this town and destroy everything I've built? You think your little amateur cooking lessons qualify you to compete with a restaurant that has been serving this community for over 20 years? You're delusional if you think anyone will choose your pretentious nonsense over real, honest food. We'll see, I said calmly. The market will decide which restaurant better serves the community's needs. This is about revenge, isn't it? Patricia said, her voice rising to a near shriek. You're trying to punish me because I tried to help you become a better cook. You're so petty and vindictive that you're willing to destroy my livelihood just to prove some pathetic point about your wounded pride. This isn't about revenge, I said, even though we both knew it was. This is about giving the people of Millbrook a choice. Competition is good for everyone. It forces businesses to improve, to innovate, to better serve their customers. If your restaurant is as successful as you claim, then you should welcome the competition. The argument continued for over an hour, with Patricia making increasingly desperate threats and accusations. She threatened to sue me for unfair competition, to have me investigated by health inspectors, to rally the community against my restaurant. She accused me of stealing her recipes, her suppliers, and her customers. She claimed that I was trying to destroy her family's legacy out of petty jealousy and spite. David tried to play peacemaker, suggesting that there was room for both restaurants in Millbrook, that we could coexist without destroying each other. But Patricia was beyond reason. She saw my restaurant as a direct attack on her identity and her power, and she was prepared to fight dirty to maintain her position. The grand opening of Revenge Treats was scheduled for the following Friday evening. I had booked every table for the first 2 weeks, and the waiting list was growing daily. The buzz around town was incredible. People were excited to try something new, to experience a different kind of dining that promised to be more sophisticated and innovative than what they had been accustomed to. Patricia spent the week leading up to my opening trying to undermine my restaurant in every way she could. Imagine, she called my suppliers, trying to convince them to stop selling to me. She spread rumors about my lack of experience and qualifications. She offered special discounts and promotions at her own restaurant, trying to lure potential customers away. From my opening, none of it worked. The people of Millbrook were too curious, too excited about the prospect of fine dining that actually lived up to its promise. They had been eating Patricia's mediocre food for years, accepting it as the best available option. Now they had a chance to experience something better, and they weren't going to let Patricia's desperation tactics stop them. The grand opening was a triumph that exceeded even my most optimistic expectations. Every dish was perfect. Every service detail was flawless, and every customer left with a smile and a promise to return. The local food blogger who attended wrote a glowing review that was shared hundreds of times on social media. The regional newspaper sent a critic who declared Revenge Treats a revelation and exactly what this community has been waiting for. But the real victory came in the weeks that followed. Word of mouth spread quickly through Millbrook, and soon I was booking reservations 2 weeks in advance. People were driving from neighboring towns to experience what everyone was calling the best restaurant in the county. Food enthusiasts from the city started making the drive upstate, drawn by the reviews and the reputation I was building. Meanwhile, Patricia's restaurant began to struggle. The contrast between our offerings was stark and undeniable. Customers who had been satisfied with her food for years suddenly realized what they had been missing. They began to see her dishes as outdated, oversalted, and uninspired. Her dining room, which had once been consistently full, started to have empty tables on weeknights. Patricia's response was to become increasingly desperate and erratic. She changed her menu almost weekly, trying to replicate the flavors and techniques she observed at my restaurant. She hired new staff, installed new equipment, and even attempted to renovate her dining room to look more modern and sophisticated. Nothing worked. The problem wasn't just the food or the atmosphere. It was the fundamental approach to hospitality and cuisine. Patricia had built her restaurant on the assumption that she could serve mediocre food to a captive audience. She had never been forced to truly compete, to innovate, to exceed her customers' expectations. I, on the other hand, had built my restaurant on the foundation of excellence. Every dish was carefully crafted, every ingredient was thoughtfully sourced, and every aspect of the dining experience was designed to create lasting memories. I had studied the best restaurants in the world, learned from the most skilled chefs, and applied those lessons to create something that was both familiar and surprising. The financial impact on Patricia's restaurant was swift and devastating. Within 3 months of my opening, her revenue had dropped by more than 60%. She was forced to lay off staff, reduce her hours, and slash her menu to cut costs. The restaurant that had once been her pride and joy was becoming a source of constant stress and anxiety. The personal cost was even higher. Patricia's identity had been so closely tied to her restaurant's success that its failure felt like a personal attack on everything she believed about herself. She became increasingly bitter and vindictive, lashing out at family members, suppliers, and even longtime customers who had started dining at my restaurant. Her relationship with David deteriorated rapidly. She blamed him for not supporting her, against me, for not convincing me to close my restaurant or move to a different location. She accused him of being weak and disloyal, of choosing his wife over his mother. The Sunday family dinners that had once been mandatory became increasingly tense and infrequent. David found himself caught between his loyalty to his mother and his love for his wife. He could see that Patricia's behavior had been unfair and destructive, but he also couldn't bear to watch his mother's life work. He tried to convince me to find ways to help Patricia, to collaborate rather than compete, to show mercy to a woman who had never shown me any kindness. But I had learned an important lesson about power dynamics and respect. Patricia had spent years trying to break me down, to make me feel inferior and unwelcome. She had used her position of authority to humiliate me in front of family and friends. She had made it clear that she would never accept me as an equal, that she would always see me as a threat to her son's loyalty and her family's traditions. I had tried to earn her respect through submission and accommodation, and it had only made her more aggressive and cruel. Now I was earning her respect through success and strength, and while she hated me for it, she could no longer dismiss me or my abilities. The defining moment came during the restaurant's 4th month of operation. Patricia had been struggling to keep her restaurant open, borrowing money from David and other family members to pay her bills. She had lost most of her regular customers and was barely covering her operating expenses. In desperate attempt to save her business, she decided to challenge me to a public cooking competition. She announced it on social media, claiming that it was time to settle once and for all which restaurant truly served the best food in Millbrook. She proposed a blind taste test, judged by a panel of local food experts, with the winner taking home a trophy and bragging rights. I knew immediately that this was a trap. Patricia was hoping to use her years of experience and local connections to create a situation where she could defeat me publicly and restore her reputation. She was betting that her knowledge of traditional cooking techniques would give her an advantage over my fancy culinary school training, but I also knew that this was an opportunity to end our conflict once and for all. If I could defeat Patricia in a direct competition, judged by neutral parties, no one would ever again question my qualifications or my right to succeed in this community. I accepted the challenge. The competition was held on a Saturday afternoon in the town square, with a large crowd of spectators gathered to watch the showdown. Local television stations sent crews to cover the event, and food bloggers from across the region came to witness what was being billed as the Battle of Millbrook. The format was simple. Each of us would prepare 3 dishes representing our restaurant's style and philosophy. The dishes would be judged blindly by a panel of 5 judges, including food critics, culinary professionals, and local business leaders. The winner would be determined by the highest combined score across all 3 dishes. Patricia chose to prepare her signature dishes: meatloaf with mashed potatoes, fried chicken with gravy, and apple pie. These were the dishes that had made her restaurant famous, the comfort foods that had satisfied Millbrook diners for over 20 years. I chose to prepare elevated versions of classic dishes that would showcase my technical skills while remaining accessible to the judges. I made short ribs braised in red wine with roasted root vegetables, pan-seared duck breast with cherry gastrique and wild rice pilaf, and a deconstructed lemon tart with lavender shortbread and candied citrus. The cooking portion of the competition took 2 hours. I felt calm and focused, drawing on all the skills I had learned over the past 3 years. Every knife cut was precise, every seasoning was balanced, and every presentation was carefully crafted to create maximum visual impact. Patricia, meanwhile, seemed nervous and rushed. She had been cooking the same dishes for decades, but the pressure of the competition and the presence of cameras and judges seemed to throw off her timing. I could see her making small mistakes over salting the meatloaf, letting the chicken get too brown, rolling the pie crust too thin. When the judging began, the difference in our approaches was immediately apparent. Patricia's dishes looked exactly like what they were: traditional comfort foods prepared competently, but without any special flair or innovation. My dishes looked like they belonged in a high-end restaurant, with careful attention to color, texture, and composition. The judges tasted each dish carefully, making notes and discussing their impressions in low voices. I tried to read their expressions, but their faces remained neutral and professional throughout the process. When the results were announced, it wasn't even close. I had won by a margin of more than 20 points, with every judge ranking my dishes higher than Patricia's in every category. The judges praised my technical skills, my creativity, and my ability to elevate familiar flavors without losing their essential character. Patricia's dishes were described as competent but uninspired, overly salty, and lacking in finesse. One judge noted that while her food was nostalgic and filling, it represented cooking techniques and flavor profiles that haven't evolved with modern culinary standards. The public vindication was complete and devastating. Patricia had challenged me to prove my superiority, and I had done exactly that in the most public way possible. There was no longer any question about which restaurant better served the community, which chef had greater skill, or which establishment deserved the support of local diners. The impact on Patricia's restaurant was immediate and final. The few customers who had remained loyal to her abandoned ship after witnessing her decisive defeat. Her suppliers, who had been extending credit based on her reputation, began demanding immediate payment. Her staff, who had been working for reduced wages, started looking for other jobs. Within 6 weeks of the competition, Patricia was forced to close Holloway's Heritage permanently. She sold the building to a developer who planned to convert it into retail space. 23 years of her life's work disappeared in a matter of months. Brought down by a daughter-in-law she had systematically underestimated and abused. The family gathering where Patricia announced the closure was one of the most difficult moments of my life. Despite everything she had done to me, despite the years of humiliation and cruelty, I felt genuinely sorry for her. I had achieved my goal of proving myself worthy of respect, but the cost had been higher than I had anticipated. Patricia looked broken and defeated, a shadow of the formidable woman who had once ruled her family with an iron fist. She had lost not just her restaurant, but her identity, her purpose, and her position of power within her own family. The woman who had once dismissed me as inadequate and unworthy now had to confront the reality that I had succeeded where she had failed. David was devastated by his mother's downfall. He blamed himself for not finding a way to prevent the conflict, for not protecting his mother from what he saw as an unnecessarily cruel fate. He struggled to understand how the woman he loved could have methodically destroyed his mother's life. even though he knew that Patricia's treatment of me had been unfair and abusive. The months that followed were difficult for our marriage. David oscillated between anger at me for what I had done and anger at his mother for creating the situation. That had led to our conflict. He couldn't reconcile his love for both of us with the reality that we had been engaged in a war that could only end with one of us completely defeated. I tried to help him understand that I had never wanted to destroy Patricia's restaurant out of pure malice or revenge. I had wanted to succeed, to prove myself, to build something beautiful and meaningful. The fact that my success had come at the cost of Patricia's failure was a consequence of the competition, not the primary motivation for my actions. But even as I explained my motivations, I knew that revenge had been a significant factor in my decision-making. I had been hurt, humiliated, and systematically degraded by Patricia for years. When I finally had the power to respond, I had chosen to use that power in a way that would demonstrate my superiority and her limitations. I had won the war, but the victory felt complicated and bittersweet. I had proven that I was more skilled, more innovative, and more capable than the woman who had spent years telling me I was inadequate. But I had also contributed to the destruction of a family business and the devastation of a woman who, despite her flaws, had been a significant part of my husband's life. The restaurant continued to thrive in the months after Patricia's closure. Without competition, Revenge Treats became the undisputed fine dining destination in Millbrook and the surrounding area. I expanded the menu, hired additional staff, and even began offering cooking classes and wine tastings for customers who wanted to learn more about culinary arts. The success brought opportunities I had never imagined. Food magazines featured my restaurant in articles about innovative rural dining. Culinary schools invited me to speak about entrepreneurship and competition in the restaurant industry. I was approached by investors who wanted to help me expand into other markets, to franchise my concept, to build a restaurant empire. But the most meaningful recognition came from the community itself. The people of Millbrook had embraced my restaurant not just as a place to eat, but as a source of pride and identity. They brought out-of-town visitors to show off their sophisticated local dining scene. They celebrated special occasions at my restaurant. They spoke with genuine affection about the food, the service, and the experience I had created. I had given them something they didn't even know they were missing: a restaurant that treated them with respect, that offered them food worthy of their appreciation, that made them feel special and valued. In return, they had given me their loyalty, their support, and their gratitude. The relationship with Patricia gradually evolved from open hostility to cold civility. She never apologized for her years of criticism and cruelty, but she also stopped actively trying to undermine my success. She had been forced to acknowledge that I was not the inadequate, unworthy woman she had once believed me to be. David slowly came to terms with the reality of what had happened. He began to understand that the conflict between his mother and me had been inevitable, that Patricia's need to control and dominate had made peaceful coexistence impossible. He realized that I had tried for years to accommodate her demands and earn her approval, and that my decision to compete with her had been a response to her refusal to accept me as an equal. More importantly, he began to see that my success had been earned through hard work, skill, and dedication I had not destroyed his mother's restaurant through luck or manipulation. I had simply provided a better product and a superior dining experience. The market had made its choice based on quality, not on personal animosity or family drama. Our marriage survived the crisis, though it required months of counseling and countless difficult conversations. We had to rebuild trust, re-establish communication, and find ways to honor both our love for each other and our complicated feelings about what had happened with Patricia. The therapy sessions were painful but necessary. I had to confront my own motivations and acknowledge the role that revenge had played in my decision-making. I had to accept that while Patricia's treatment of me had been unfair and cruel, my response had been calculated and ruthless in its own way. David had to confront his own enabling behavior and acknowledge that his failure to protect me from his mother's abuse had contributed to the escalation of our conflict. He had to accept that his desire to maintain peace in the family had actually made the situation worse by allowing Patricia to continue her destructive behavior without consequences. We both had to learn new ways of communicating about difficult topics, of supporting each other through challenging situations, and of maintaining our individual identities while building a shared life together. The healing process was slow and sometimes frustrating, but it ultimately made our marriage stronger and more honest. We learned to face problems directly rather than avoiding them, to support each other's goals and ambitions, and to create boundaries that protected our relationship from outside interference. Today, 3 years after Patricia's restaurant closed, Revenge Treats is more successful than ever. We have expanded into catering, opened a second location in a neighboring town, and launched a line of specialty food products that are sold in gourmet stores throughout the region. I have hired Patricia's former sous chef, a talented woman who had been underutilized and undervalued at Holloway's heritage. She has flourished in our collaborative environment, contributing innovative ideas and helping to train our growing staff. It gives me satisfaction to know that I have provided opportunities for people who have been held back by Patricia's rigid and hierarchical management style. The cooking classes I offer have become incredibly popular, especially among women who want to develop their culinary skills and confidence. I love teaching them the techniques I learned in culinary school, sharing the knowledge that transformed my own relationship with food and cooking. Many of my students tell me that they came to the classes because they were inspired by my story, by the way I had turned criticism and rejection into motivation and success. They want to learn not just how to cook, but how to believe in themselves, how to pursue their passions despite the doubts and discouragement of others. Patricia has moved to Florida to live with her sister. She occasionally visits Millbrook, but she no longer has the central role in the community that once defined her identity. I hear updates about her through David, who maintains a careful but loving relationship with his mother. She has never eaten at my restaurant, and I don't expect she ever will. But I also don't feel the need for her approval or acknowledgement anymore. I have proven everything I needed to prove, not just to her, but to myself. The woman who once told me I would never be good enough to cook for her family now has to live with the knowledge that I built something better, more successful and more respected than anything she ever achieved. The woman who once dismissed my abilities as inadequate now has to acknowledge that I succeeded where she failed. I don't take pleasure in her downfall, but I do take pride in my own rise. I transformed years of criticism and rejection into the motivation that drove me to excellence. I turned my greatest weakness, my desire to please and be accepted, into my greatest strength, my determination to succeed on my own terms. The name Revenge Treats no longer feels like a reference to my conflict with Patricia. It has evolved into something more positive and empowering. The revenge is not about hurting others, but about proving wrong everyone who ever doubted your potential, about transforming pain into purpose, about serving success to those who try to serve you failure. Every dish that leaves my kitchen is a small act of rebellion against the voices that say you're not good enough, smart enough, or talented enough to achieve your dreams. Every satisfied customer is proof that excellence speaks louder than criticism. Every successful service is evidence that hard work and dedication can overcome prejudice and doubt. I think about my grandmother often now, especially when I'm in the kitchen developing new recipes or teaching cooking classes. She taught me that food is love made visible. But she also taught me something else that I didn't fully understand until I lived through this experience. She taught me that cooking is power, the power to nourish, to comfort, to bring people together, and to create something beautiful from simple ingredients. Patricia tried to use that power to diminish me, to make me feel small and inadequate. But in doing so, she accidentally taught me how to claim that power for myself. Every criticism she leveled at my cooking forced me to become better. Every comparison to Rebecca pushed me to develop my own unique style. Every dismissive comment motivated me to prove her wrong. The irony is that Patricia actually made me a better chef. Her relentless criticism forced me to examine every aspect of my cooking, to question every technique, to strive for perfection in ways I might never have done if she had simply accepted me from the beginning. She was an unwitting teacher who gave me the greatest gift possible, the burning desire to excel. I've learned to see failure and criticism as information rather than condemnation. When a dish doesn't work, when a service goes wrong, when a customer complains, I don't take it as a personal attack on my worth as a person. I take it as feedback that helps me improve, as data that guides my next steps. This perspective has transformed not just my cooking, but my entire approach to life. I'm no longer afraid of taking risks, of trying new things, of putting myself in situations where I might fail. I know that failure is just another form of education, another opportunity to learn and grow. The restaurant business is notoriously difficult, with a high failure rate and constant challenges. But I've discovered that the skills I developed while dealing with Patricia's criticism, resilience, determination, the ability to turn negative energy into positive action, are exactly the skills needed to succeed in this industry. When food critics write harsh reviews, when suppliers let me down, when equipment breaks during a busy service, I don't panic or despair. I remember that I've survived worse than this. I've been questioned, criticized, and dismissed by someone who was supposed to love and support me. And I turned that experience into triumph. The financial success of Revenge Treats has given me independence and security that I never had before. I'm not dependent on anyone else's approval or support. I've built something entirely my own, something that reflects my vision, my values, and my standards, but more importantly, I've gained something that can't be measured in dollars or awards: self-respect. I know who I am, what I'm capable of, and what I deserve. I know that my worth is not determined by other people's opinions or expectations. I know that I have the power to create my own success, to define my own value, to write my own story. Young women who come to my cooking classes remind me of who I used to be: uncertain, eager to please, willing to accept criticism as truth rather than opinion. I try to teach them not just cooking techniques, but confidence. I try to show them that they have the power to transform their lives, to pursue their dreams, to refuse, to be limited by other people's narrow vision of what they can achieve. I tell them about my grandmother's wisdom, about the power of food to heal and connect. But I also tell them about the power of refusing to be diminished, about the strength that comes from believing in yourself even when others don't, about the satisfaction of proving wrong everyone who ever underestimated you. The relationship between David and me has evolved in ways I never expected. We've become partners in the truest sense, supporting each other's goals and dreams, celebrating each other's successes, and facing challenges together as a team. The crisis with Patricia forced us to communicate more honestly, to set clearer boundaries, and to prioritize our marriage over the expectations of others. David has become one of my biggest supporters, helping with the business side of the restaurant, attending industry events with me, and proudly telling everyone about his wife's success. He's learned to see strength and determination as attractive qualities rather than threatening ones. He's learned to value partnership over submission, equality over hierarchy. We've also learned to create our own family traditions, separate from the baggage of his mother's expectations. We host dinner parties for our friends, celebrating food, and fellowship without the undercurrent of criticism and comparison that once poisoned family meals. We travel together, exploring new cuisines and cultures, building memories that belong only to us. The Sunday dinners that once filled me with dread have been replaced by collaborative cooking sessions where we experiment with new recipes, share stories about our week, and plan for the future. Our kitchen has become a place of creativity and joy rather than anxiety and performance. I've also reconnected with my own family in ways that were impossible when I was consumed with trying to earn Patricia's approval. My parents, who live several states away, visit regularly now, and they're amazed by the transformation in my confidence and happiness. They tell me that I seem like a completely different person, more sure of myself, more willing to express my opinions, more comfortable taking up space in the world. My sister, who had watched me struggle with Patricia's treatment for years, says that seeing me succeed has inspired her to pursue her own dreams more aggressively. She's learned from my example that you don't have to accept other people's limitations on your potential, that you can create your own path even when others tell you it's impossible. The cooking classes have become more than just a way to generate additional revenue. They've become a form of therapy, both for me and for my students. There's something profoundly healing about teaching others to trust their instincts, to experiment with flavors, to create something delicious from simple ingredients. Many of my students are middle-aged women who have spent years cooking for their families, without recognition or appreciation. They come to my classes hungry for more than just culinary knowledge. They're hungry for validation, for encouragement, for permission to believe that their contributions matter. I tried to give them what I wish someone had given me during those dark years with Patricia: the understanding that their worth is not determined by other people's approval, that their skills and talents have value regardless of whether others recognize them, that they have the power to create beauty and meaning in their own lives. The advanced classes attract more ambitious students who want to learn restaurant-quality techniques. These students remind me of myself when I was first starting culinary school: eager, determined, willing to work hard to achieve their goals. I love sharing the knowledge I've gained, passing on the skills that transformed my life. Some of my students have gone on to open their own restaurants, food trucks, or catering businesses. Others have simply become more confident home cooks who take pride in their abilities. All of them have learned that cooking is about more than just following recipes. It's about trusting yourself, taking risks, and creating something that brings joy to others. The seasonal menu changes at Revenge Treats have become events that the community looks forward to. I work closely with local farmers and suppliers to create dishes that celebrate the ingredients available at different times of the year. Spring brings asparagus and peas. Summer offers tomatoes and berries. Fall provides squash and apples. Winter delivers hearty root vegetables and preserved foods. This connection to the seasons and the local agricultural community has deepened my appreciation for the craft of cooking. I'm not just combining ingredients, I'm telling the story of our region, celebrating the work of local farmers, and creating a connection between diners and the land that sustains us. The wine program I've developed has become another source of pride and recognition. I've studied wine pairing extensively, building relationships with distributors and winemakers who share my commitment to quality and innovation. Our wine list features both well-known labels and hidden gems, with detailed descriptions that help diners understand how each wine complements our food. The monthly wine dinners have become some of our most popular events, bringing together food and wine enthusiasts for educational tastings that pair multiple courses with carefully selected wines. These events allow me to showcase more elaborate dishes and creative presentations while building deeper relationships with our customers. I've also started hosting special events for holidays and celebrations, creating unique menus that can't be found anywhere else in the region. These events often sell out within hours of being announced, and they've become a significant source of revenue and community engagement. The catering business has expanded beyond what I initially imagined. We now provide food for weddings, corporate events, private parties, and community celebrations. Each catering job is an opportunity to introduce new people to our food and our philosophy, to show them that exceptional cuisine doesn't have to be intimidating or pretentious. The wedding catering in particular has become a source of deep satisfaction. I love being part of people's most important celebrations, creating food that becomes part of their memories, contributing to the joy and meaning of their special day. Many couples tell me that their guests still talk about the food from their wedding months or years later. The corporate catering has opened doors to new business relationships and networking opportunities. Local businesses have discovered that serving exceptional food at their events reflects positively on their own commitment to quality and attention to detail. Several companies have become regular clients, booking us for monthly meetings, annual conferences, and special celebrations. The success of the catering business has also allowed me to give back to the community in ways that feel meaningful and sustainable. We donate our services to local fundraising events, provide meals for families in crisis, and support community organizations that align with our values. The second location in the neighboring town of Riverside has exceeded all of our projections. The community there had been underserved in terms of fine dining options, and they embraced revenge treats with enthusiasm and loyalty. The Riverside location has allowed us to experiment with a slightly different concept, more casual but still elevated, with a focus on lunch service and takeout options. Managing 2 locations has taught me new skills in delegation, systems development, and quality control. I've learned to train managers who can maintain our standards even when I'm not physically present, to create processes that ensure consistency across both locations, and to build a team culture that supports our values and goals. The staff at both locations has become like an extended family. I've learned that treating employees with respect, providing opportunities for growth, and sharing the financial success of the business creates a positive work environment that benefits everyone. Our turnover rate is much lower than the industry average, and several staff members have been promoted to leadership roles as we've expanded. The specialty food products line started almost by accident. Customers kept asking to buy our signature sauces, spice blends, and condiments to use at home. What began as a few small batches of items sold at the restaurant has evolved into a full product line that's distributed to gourmet stores throughout the region. The most popular items are our house-made hot sauce, our signature spice blend, and our gourmet mustards. Each product represents hours of testing and refinement, ensuring that the flavors translate well to home cooking, and that the quality meets our exacting standards. The product line has become another way to share our philosophy and approach with people who might not be able to visit the restaurant regularly. It's also provided an additional revenue stream that helps support the ongoing operations and expansion of the business. The recognition from food magazines and culinary organizations has been gratifying but also challenging. Awards and accolades bring increased expectations and scrutiny. They attract customers who come with preconceived notions about what they should experience. They create pressure to maintain consistency and continue innovating, but they've also opened doors to opportunities I never imagined. I've been invited to participate in food festivals, collaborate with other chefs, and contribute to culinary publications. These experiences have expanded my knowledge, introduced me to new techniques and ingredients, and connected me with a network of professionals who share my passion for excellence. Speaking engagements at culinary schools and industry conferences have become another unexpected aspect of my career. I love sharing my story with aspiring chefs and restaurant owners, helping them understand that success in this industry requires more than just cooking skills. It requires business acumen, emotional resilience, and the ability to build relationships with customers and staff. I always tell my audiences that the most important ingredient in any successful restaurant is authenticity. Customers can tell when you're genuinely passionate about what you're doing, when you care about their experience, when you're committed to excellence rather than just profit. That authenticity can't be faked or manufactured. It has to come from a genuine desire to serve others and create something meaningful. The cookbook I'm writing represents another evolution in my career. It's not just a collection of recipes, it's a memoir that tells the story of my journey from criticized daughter-in-law to successful restaurateur. It's a guide for other women who want to transform their lives, pursue their dreams, and refuse to be limited by other people's expectations. The process of writing the cookbook has forced me to reflect on everything I've learned, everything I've overcome, and everything I've achieved. It's helped me understand that my story is not just about revenge or competition. It's about resilience, transformation, and the power of refusing to accept less than you deserve. Each recipe in the cookbook comes with a story about where I learned the technique, why the dish is meaningful to me, how it represents a particular stage in my journey. The recipes range from simple comfort foods to elaborate restaurant-quality dishes, but they all share a common thread of being created with love, intention, and respect for the ingredients. The cookbook also includes business advice for aspiring restaurateurs, cooking tips for home chefs, and philosophical reflections on the role of food in our lives. It's designed to be both practical and inspirational, helping readers improve their cooking skills while also encouraging them to pursue their own dreams and ambitions. Looking back on the past 5 years, I sometimes marvel at how dramatically my life has changed. I went from being an insecure woman, desperate for acceptance, to a confident entrepreneur who has built something lasting and meaningful. I went from dreading family dinners to hosting celebrated culinary events. I went from being criticized for my cooking to being recognized as one of the region's most talented chefs. But the most important change has been internal. I've learned to trust my instincts, to value my opinions, to believe in my abilities. I've learned that other people's criticism says more about them than it does about me. I've learned that success is not about proving others wrong. It's about proving yourself right. The relationship with Patricia will always be complicated. I can't forget the years of humiliation and criticism, but I've also learned to see her as a flawed person who was protecting her own insecurities and fears. Her treatment of me was unacceptable, but it was also the catalyst that forced me to discover my own strength and potential. I don't forgive her for the pain she caused, but I also don't carry that pain as a burden anymore. I've transformed it into something positive, something that serves others and creates beauty in the world. I've learned that the best revenge is not causing harm to others. It's refusing to let others cause lasting harm to you. The success of Revenge Treats has given me a platform to advocate for other women in the culinary industry, to support local farmers and suppliers, and to contribute to the economic development of our community. I've learned that success carries responsibility, the responsibility to use your influence and resources to make a positive difference. The mentorship program I've started for young women interested in culinary careers has become one of my most rewarding projects. These young women face many of the same challenges I face: discrimination, criticism, doubt from others and themselves. I try to provide them with the support and encouragement I wish I had received, helping them navigate the industry and build confidence in their abilities. Some of these mentees have gone on to work in our restaurants. Others have pursued culinary education, and still others have started their own food businesses. All of them have learned that they have the power to define their own success, to create their own opportunities, and to refuse to be limited by other people's narrow vision of what they can achieve. The charitable work we do through the restaurant has become an integral part of our mission. We participate in fundraising events for local nonprofits, provide meals for community service organizations, and support causes related to food security and nutrition education. This work reminds me that food is about more than just pleasure or profit. It's about caring for others and building stronger communities. The farm-to-table initiatives we've developed have strengthened our relationships with local agricultural producers while also supporting sustainable farming practices. We purchase ingredients from more than 20 local farms, helping to keep money in the community while also ensuring that our food is as fresh and flavorful as possible. These relationships have taught me about the hard work and dedication required to grow quality ingredients. They've deepened my appreciation for the farmers who make our success possible, and they've inspired me to use every ingredient with the respect and care it deserves. The cooking classes for children have become another favorite project. These classes teach basic cooking skills while also building confidence and creativity. Many of the children who attend are initially intimidated by the kitchen, but they leave with a sense of accomplishment and pride in what they've created. I love watching children discover that they can create something delicious with their own hands. That cooking is not mysterious or difficult when you understand the basic principles. Many parents tell me that their children go home from class eager to help with meal preparation, excited to share what they've learned. The private dining room we added to the original restaurant has become a popular venue for special celebrations and business meetings. The intimate space allows us to provide more personalized service while also generating additional revenue. We've hosted everything from marriage proposals to corporate board meetings, adapting our service and menu to meet the specific needs of each event. The expansion of our beverage program to include craft cocktails and specialty coffee has attracted new customers while also increasing our profit margins. I've worked with bartenders and coffee roasters to create unique offerings that complement our food menu and reflect our commitment to quality and innovation. The social media presence we've built has become an important tool for connecting with customers, sharing our story, and promoting special events. I've learned to use these platforms not just for marketing, but for education and community building. We share recipes, cooking tips, and behind-the-scenes glimpses of restaurant life. The online ordering system we implemented during the pandemic has remained popular, even as restrictions have lifted. Many customers appreciate the convenience of being able to order our food for pickup or delivery, and it's provided another revenue stream that helps support the business during slower periods. The loyalty program we developed rewards frequent customers with exclusive access to new menu items, special events, and private tastings. These programs have helped us build deeper relationships with our best customers, while also encouraging repeat visits and word-of-mouth recommendations. The future of Revenge Treats looks bright and full of possibilities. We're exploring opportunities to expand into new markets, develop new product lines, and create new experiences for our customers. But growth will always be balanced with our commitment to quality, authenticity, and service. I've learned that success is not a destination but a journey. Each achievement opens new doors and creates new challenges. The key is to maintain the passion and dedication that got you started, while also being willing to adapt and evolve as circumstances change. The story of Revenge Treats is ultimately a story about transformation. My transformation from a criticized daughter-in-law to a successful entrepreneur, but also the transformation of our community's dining scene, our employees' careers, and our customers' expectations. Every person who walks through our doors becomes part of that story. Every dish we serve, every interaction we have, every decision we make contributes to the ongoing narrative of what we're building together. I'm proud of what we've accomplished, but I'm even more excited about what we'll achieve in the years to come. The foundation we've built is strong. The team we've assembled is talented and dedicated, and the community we serve continues to support and inspire us. The criticism that once nearly broke me has become the foundation of my strength. The doubt that once paralyzed me has become the fuel for my ambition. The rejection that once defined me has become the catalyst for my success. This is what I've learned. The people who try to diminish you are often the ones who most fear your potential. The criticism that hurts the most is often the criticism that pushes you to become better than you ever imagined possible. The challenges that seem insurmountable are often the ones that reveal your true capabilities. Patricia may have intended to break me, but instead she made me. She may have wanted to prove that I wasn't good enough, but instead she inspired me to become better than good enough. She may have tried to keep me in my place, but instead she motivated me to create my own place in the world. The name Revenge Treats will always remind me of where I came from and how far I've traveled. But it also reminds me that the best revenge is not hurting others. It's refusing to be hurt by them. It's transforming pain into purpose, criticism into creativity, and doubt into determination. Today, when I stand in my kitchen, surrounded by the sounds and smells of a successful restaurant, I think about my grandmother's words. Food is love made visible. I've learned that success is also love made visible, love for yourself, love for your craft, love for the people you serve. Every dish that leaves my kitchen carries that love. Every customer who leaves satisfied carries that love back into the world. Every employee who grows and thrives in our environment carries that love forward in their own journey. This is my legacy, not just the restaurants I've built or the awards I've won, but the love I've shared, the confidence I've inspired, and the proof I've provided that anyone can transform their life if they're willing to work for it and refuse to give up on themselves. The woman who once told me I would never be good enough now has to live with the knowledge that I became better than she ever imagined possible. But more importantly, I get to live with the knowledge that I proved it to myself. That's the victory that matters most, not the defeat of others, but the discovery of your own strength. Have you ever been betrayed by the people closest to you? Share your story in the comments. Someone out there needs to hear it. And you need to know that you're not alone. Sometimes the people who hurt us the most are the ones who, without meaning to, give us the greatest gift of all, the motivation to become who we were always meant to be.